Amidst the political and economic chaos of October 1998, another outbreak was gripping Indonesia, one that wasn't just felt in protests or headlines but in the shadows. Reports flooded in of mysterious figures dressed in black, entities said to have supernatural powers. They could fly, they could vanish, cling to walls, and they were hunting religious leaders and traditionalist Muslims. They were ninjas. In one case, a student at a Muslim boarding school spotted two ninja-like figures sprinting across the schoolyard, chains in their hands. Outside, two pedicab drivers watched this in horror as the same figures leaped onto a nearby shop roof outside that school. And then more witnesses emerged. The black-clad entities were seen jumping from rooftop to trees, back to rooftops, and then disappeared behind banana groves. The police were called in to investigate but found nothing, and then they left. But the ninjas then returned. Afraid, but still curious, the students took matters into their own hands. They chased the figures into a dead end, but just as they thought they had them cornered, the ninjas just vanished, as if going straight through the walls. Confused, the two students reached out to inspect the wall. Maybe it's a fake wall? And they then collapsed, shocked, in a kind of trance, as if the wall had electrocuted them. These were the supposed culprits plastered across Indonesian newspapers, the same figures blamed for the brutal killings of over 100 alleged sorcerers across the country in 1998. In part 1, we talked about the killings, how they started, how fear turned deadly, and how communities turned on their own people. But in this episode, we're diving into what came next, the aftermath, the unanswered questions, the rumors of military involvement, and the conspiracy theories that none of this was as it seemed. Was this truly a supernatural panic, or was it something else, something far more human that were pulling the strings? Content warning. This video includes description of violence, murder, death, rituals, and other supernatural content. Listener discretion is advised, as some stories may be unsettling or sensitive to certain audiences. Turn down the lights, snuggle up tight, and get ready for another Tuck Tale. What happens when the line between fact and folklore blurs? Welcome to Tuck Tales, where urban legends meet true crime and myth aren't always just stories. My name is Afrina, your host for the episode.
My name is Diski.
And today we are diving into the second part of the East Java ninja killings. Do you still remember the story?
Yeah, of course.
It's
That's
an interesting
one.
one.
Of my favorite story of yours.
Yeah. So part 1 is all about the killings, and part 2 we're talking about why. By September 1998, more than 100 people were dead, heads severed, bodies burned, and villages torn apart by fear. But as the tension died down, people are now left asking questions. How did it truly happen? Who caused it? And as the killings subsided and a new month came in October 1998, people all over the country were scrambling to find answers in the middle of chaos. And this is when the rumor of ninjas with supernatural powers came. Apparently, the news said that they were targeting traditionalist Muslims and their leaders who were responsible for the killings of sorcerers in the Banyuwangi area. Disconnected, or maybe as the truth was blurred at the point of publishing, newspapers started writing articles that ninja-like perpetrators were responsible for the sorcerer killings.
Really?
Publishers, journalists, they were writing ninjas are in Indonesia killing sorcerers. In the papers, it mentions that the killers were dressed as ninjas, wore masks like ninjas, and by mid to late October, instead of the press reporting that the killers looked like ninjas, it had become that the killers were ninjas. Because of misinformation. They said they were dressed in black, they were wearing masks, they looked like ninjas, and then over time it's like, they're ninjas.
Okay, I see.
Doesn't this prove to be like another mass hysteria problem? You just run with what you get, I guess. It seems as though mass hysteria is almost the root cause to everything. As rumors of these dangerous ninjas spread, local communities became terrified. Villages took matters into their own hands and began posting guards all around their vicinity, and around this time, there were many sightings of ninjas where some were even caught and killed. On October 21, a mentally ill person who had been suspected of being a ninja had been caught and handed over to the police. On October 22, 2 people were caught and handed over to the police. And a week later, local residents of Semarang caught 2 ninjas, and we don't know if these villagers were going to kill these 2 ninja-like people, but the police got to them and then took them into custody before attack could happen on them. In Malang, there was a report that a ninja had been killed, then beheaded. And then a large convoy was even done where people of the village were riding motorcycles. They hung the head on the back of the motorbike and paraded the head around several districts of Malang.
Oh my god.
Insane. This convoy, though, had caused a big stir and controversy, and on October 19, 54 men were arrested who were a part of this so-called convoy. And the victim, who was also the accused ninja, he was Zainal Arifin, who people said had a mental illness where he couldn't really remember stuff very well, so they thought he had been a ninja.
It's always the mentally ill one who become the suspected culprit.
They don't know how to defend themselves very well.
And it's easy to manipulate them to say yes, they are the one.
To coerce a confession. And he was also a Malang resident. So they did this to their own people. By the end of the month, the Malang District Police identified 25 people either killed or victimized under suspicion of being a ninja. It's wild. It's like a whole vicious cycle, non-stop. There were so many random killings that happened back in the day. There was even a case where 2 strangers had walked into a village, and because the villagers didn't know who they were beaten to death. Or when other strangers who were travelers were stopped at a roadside guard post because these villagers, they set up guards and roadblocks to protect themselves against these so-called ninjas. They were requested their personal identification, but they didn't have any, and so they were killed. And not only strangers, beggars and other workers also fell victim to this because they didn't know how to defend themselves. And in the end, many ninjas were identified by the families to just be people who were a bit mentally ill. So how could this happen? How can ninjas suddenly be responsible for the killings even though we both know in part 1 they were their own neighbors? They were their villagers that went and killed these sorcerers. It's because some of the killers who killed the sorcerers wore sarung to cover their head. People suspected that some of them wore head coverings because they want to exploit a sense of mysterious, deadly, supernatural power when killing these sorcerers, which then snowballed into a big ninja issue because a lot of them would wear dark colors when they were killing them. There was also another thing that I found interesting. Ninja fear can be derived by all these factors and the fact that so many news headlines mentioned the existence of ninja, but during that period of time, members of the Indonesian army were reputed to have dressed as ninjas in some operations.
Oh, really?
Some
Why?
sting operations or spy missions, they did dress in all black. And another thing is that ninjas fit into the pre-existing conception since Javanese people believed in the supernatural. All dark ninjas. You and me might just have a question mark there, like if the villagers knew who killed the sorcerers, some of them even took part in it, how could they believe that it was caused by the ninjas? Like, they're the ones who killed. But the thing is, in their village, they knew what happened. They knew the killers, but when they heard stuff from other villages happening, they were sure that it had been sort of a conspiracy and it had been the ninjas and not at all the same thing that happened in their village. These rumors and killings were the aftermath of the sorcerer killings that we went over in part 1. The impact just keeps snowballing and it shows how rumors can be so deadly, but this is not the only reason why it happened. In fact, 1998 had not been a good year for the country, which could be some of the reasons why tensions were so high in Indonesia. Do you know anything about the political state of 1998
Yeah.
in
I
the
learned it
country?
at school.
Was it bad?
Yeah, it's really bad.
There were so many riots and protests and they were burning buildings and stuff, right?
There are many people who got killed.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just brief you a little on the state of Indonesia at that time. So, reformasi, translated as the reform movement, refers to the period leading up to and after the fall of President Suharto in May 1998. It is a time meant to bring reformation and freedom. But internally in the country, many political issues had risen within this period that he was the president of Indonesia. While there were a lot of events that could be marked as the start, such as the parties that were involved in the political aspects of the country, a scandal at the time that involved the new national car project headed by Suharto's son. What really provided momentum for reformasi was the 1997 monetary crisis, or as Indonesians would like to call it, krismon, right?
Crisis moneter.
During this time, the rupiah crashed, prices for essential goods doubled, and jobs vanished. It was truly a nightmare. The problems were yet again compounded by the agricultural sector at the time when it turned out rainfall decided to reduce at just the right time at this time to make tensions worse. At that time, the reduced rainfall accounted for a 10% fall in national rice output, with other produce also being negatively affected. The country was on the brink of falling apart and demands for reformasi increased. Demonstrations started happening, riots, students and activists demanded an end to Suharto's regime, corrupt practices, and its oppressive policies. They demanded social justice, freer elections, and stronger civil society. But this is a whole nother political issue that I'm not going to touch on heavily on this episode. But if you guys want to have a read, it's really heavy and it's all can be found on the internet and Indonesian textbooks.
Yeah.
If you guys want to learn everything. But you might ask, what does this have to do with the sorcerer killings? Well, the situation in the country had made people very desperate. And they were desperate enough to find someone to blame, and in some parts of Indonesia, that enemy had become the so-called black magic sorcerer. And amidst all the chaos, the killing of sorcerers could even be seen as an opportunity to get rid of them once and for all. In Indonesia, magic and sorcery is perceived to be very common, that elites use them as a method of gaining wealth, popularity, and others to get forward in their careers.
Yeah, that's so true.
Until now. Is there any famous cases that you know?
There is actually a rumor why Joko Widodo became a president, because there is an influence of supernatural being called Nyi Ratu Roro Kidul. Yeah.
Oh.
It's one of like a really big entity, supernatural being in Indonesia. It's really famous for that.
There are a lot of cases of Indonesian elites trying to use black magic to get forward, such as in this case in 2003, there had been an aspiring politician named Muhammad and had been a contestant in the elections for a provincial parliament, but he suffered from hepatitis. He believed that sorcery had been responsible, instead of him just being sick. He died from the disease, but not before he named Abdul his close associate and co-founder of a lobbying group responsible for his disease. So before he passed away, he said that he was the one who caused his disease, because he was his competitor. This also happened in universities where candidates often seek higher positions, as competition in universities are usually very fierce and salaries are very low. These scholars would use shamans to gain supporters and harm competitors.
Yeah.
In Banyuwangi, where the killings happened, they believe that there are two types of magic practitioners, dukun and kiai. Do you know the difference between dukun and kiai?
Yeah, it's people who are using magic through Quran, but like for black magic, they actually make the deal with the devil and entity like that.
So that's the difference between the magics. Yeah, so dukun, they're known to be fortune tellers. They have magical abilities such as they can locate a lost item, they can assist with marital problems, they can cure infertility, they can ensure a promotion, they can heal pain, and they can recover stolen money. And on the other hand, as Diski mentioned, kiai are respected primarily for their status as Muslim leaders, right? And scholars. Their powers are secondary, but they also possess a similar range of magical services, as you might call it, as the dukun. And these people are known to use white magic. The use of black magic is the problem. These sorcerers cause damage to people. They cast spells and they blow the spell, which can cause misfortune. The misfortune is usually illness, and there's not just one illness that's attributed to sorcery, any disease. or any illness.
And a lot of like illnesses that cannot be cured or cannot be explained are usually attributed to the black magic.
So like cancer, leukemia and stuff.
It's like, for example, if I was sick and then I went to the hospital and then the doctor said that there is nothing wrong with me, then people will believe that, oh, someone do black magic on me.
Because it can't be explained. But don't you think back in the day when we don't have the technology that we have now, we didn't even know what caused cancer and stuff? So maybe it's not black magic, maybe our technology just isn't that advanced yet. So based on all the information of black magic and white magic, for the East Java killings, how do you think they chose their sorcerers to be killed? They said that the existence of victims constitute that the person is a sorcerer. For instance, in discussing the distinction between real and supernatural, a person mentioned in an interview said that if you want to prove it, it's difficult and it's irrational, then it's actually ilmu. For people in Banyuwangi, proof of guilt of sorcery is not required because as it stands, it's supernatural. If you can prove it, it's science. If you can't, it's supernatural.
But like this kind of people usually got a clue from like dreams, from unexplainable things. Maybe they experience something like they see a figure, an entity, gosh, like that following them around. I heard a lot of things about people who believe they got sick because of black magic. The reason why they can get the feeling and evidence that they are actually someone did black magic on them is through dreams, and then maybe because like they feel really lazy to pray to God, things like that.
But couldn't it be psychological aspects? Maybe you should see a therapist. But what about you? Would you believe them?
I'm in the middle. I don't really know, because like I've heard a lot of stories about people who has experienced this kind of thing. Because like one of my friend, she was the daughter of a politician party in Indonesia. They used to be really big, but then they didn't get choose in another election. They lost a lot of money. They almost went into bankruptcy. And it is said that her parents, she said to me, her parents has actually someone behind them. And that person is Dukun. That person is someone who knows black magic. And they said that before the election happened, her parents actually have the feeling that they're not going to be chosen this time. When I asked her why, she said that her parents feel like there is a stumbling block in front of them, and that is a supernatural magic. Someone used black magic on them because they feel really heavy every time. Like every time they walk or went somewhere, they feel like someone putting a heavy things on their shoulder, like they're carrying a heavy like 10 kilogram of something like
but
that.
they also have Dukun behind them.
Yeah,
The Dukun is not helping?
the Dukun said that there is stumbling block, like there is a rival and competitor, and like that person is stronger than them. And the thing is that during that time when they actually have to like pray and like get close to God, because like they're in the middle of election, something that they're dreaming for and want to achieve, they actually refuse to pray. They like put their back on God. If something like that is following you, then God is the force that make you,
That helps them.
and will protect you. So like if you're separate from God, then this kind of like entity can
latch on.
you and like use their power easily on you. But also, there is a rumor, not really a rumor, a lot of people in Indonesia actually believe Indonesia is like a country that was being colonized for a long time by powerful countries, right? Then how did they win? And it is said that Indonesian magic contributed with that.
But then Malaysia was colonized. Everywhere around the world is also colonized.
There's like a lot of words about that too. And also the fact that there is a rumor about Indonesia's first president, Soekarno-Hatta, have magical power.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of rumors of Indonesian leaders having magical powers.
Yeah.
They use magic to
Mhm.
get forward in their career. There's a lot of black magic cases that is in Malaysia, Indonesia that could be interesting if we touch on them. So anyway, guys, these political, economical tensions and the existence of a magic system and belief in Indonesia, like Diski just explained, particularly in the rural Banyuwangi area, can form an explanation on why the killings in 1998 happened in the first place. The violence against sorcerers are not just derived from stress and tension from the state of the world at that time, but it had been a deeply ingrained fear that some people are really sorcerers. The only way to protect family members and yourself from harm is to kill its practitioners, and that's what they believed at the time. And that is the case of 1998 Ninja East Java killings. Now, if you're someone who loves creepy stories based on legends, just tune in for episodes in English with me as your host every Friday and with Diski every Tuesdays on all podcasting platforms such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and others. So until next time, bye bye!